Hello, everyone. I'm Justin, co-founder and CEO of Layer. I will be your moderator today. Before I introduce our panelists today, I'll set some quick context. Embedding payments is a well-trodden path for a lot of vertical SaaS platforms. As we saw earlier today, it's something that a lot of folks in this room have already done. But over the last few years, there's been this emergence of a broader ecosystem of other embedded fintech products. And this ranges everything from embedded payroll to capital to banking to accounting to tax. And it's a huge opportunity for a lot of platforms. It can be really meaningful lines of business for your companies. But where do you start? And the path for every company is different. And so today we'll spend our time walking through the journey with folks that are all actively exploring that and have launched or are launching multiple of these other embedded fintech products. Talk through how did you decide where to start, what did building look like, and then ultimately how did you launch and scale. We'll also make sure to save time towards the end for Q&A, as I'm sure this is something a lot of folks here have thought about and will have questions on. So with that, I will hand it over to our panelists to introduce themselves. And as we go down the line, if you don't mind introducing yourself, your company, and the types of businesses you serve, and then also what embedded products you currently offer beyond payments, or what are you exploring? So we'll start with Zach.
Yeah, my name's Zach Holsworth. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Fintech, and we're a vertical SaaS company that is supporting cash-based independent healthcare providers, typically direct primary care or concierge medicine. We power their billing, enrollment, electronic medical record scheduling, all the things to enable them to run their business. We're in terms of the products we're using, so we're actually just in the process of shifting payments over to Rainforest. So obviously, that's from Stripe. So we're about $1 billion of payment volume on the payment side, but we're in a pilot right now with Layer for accounting and tax. So good stuff. And we're also in an evaluation phase looking at embedded financing capital as well as potentially banking. And there's sort of a bunch of other ideas, but I'm trying to limit my exposure right now to a couple of things.
Gilly?
Gilly, I'm Chief Product Officer of Sense. Sense has a full suite of management tools for the garment care industry, so laundromats and dry cleaners. We manage everything from the POS, your delivery system, your employee management, and from an embed side, we currently do 3. We do finance, we do insurance, and we do marketing. And as far as things that we're looking at, all of it.
I'm Jamie. I'm the GM for Fintech at Techion. Techion's an automotive software platform that serves primarily franchise automotive dealerships in North America. We currently have payments as our major driver of fintech, but we have release capital. It's a low uptake because of the cash-rich nature of our customers. We have payroll through Check, who's a sponsor here, and our next step is going to be treasury and issuing.
Awesome. So to start, I'd love to start with the why. When you're early in your journey, you've launched payments, you're offering that's humming along. When did you feel ready to move beyond payments, and what was the opportunity that excited you about taking that first step? And maybe Gilly, if you want to start.
Sure. I think that when you're thinking about when to go after some sort of embed opportunity, it's oftentimes a question of what are you going after, what are your goals? Are you going after market share or wallet share, right? And these sometimes are competing goals on the go-to-market side. And so I think for us, we said, hey, if we choose to spend our resources on an embed and not necessarily on what we're building from a core perspective, sure, we can gain wallet share, but we might risk some market share, and we might risk time. There's an opportunity cost of not spending our time on that core piece, because then our competitors might go ahead and do it. And so we need to be very, very clear about, hey, what is the goal of this embed, and does it make sense now? And what risk is spending my resources there instead of here, post my business? Now, sometimes the embed is super core, and great, we should do that first thing. But when it's some ancillary value, that's where you're competing with kind of your core development process.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think for us, payments was a no-brainer, but outside of that, we started to look at, what do our incumbent providers that we're competing against, so market share for us, what do they offer that would be a limiting factor for a customer to come to our platform? And payroll was a clear answer. All of our competitors provide that inside of their platform. And then on top of that, we look at wallet share and efficiency. So what dealers are using outside of our platform, those are the next things that we target.
Yeah, I think for us, one of the factors was actually the cost of developing a lot of these products historically, even though perhaps we may have considered it core, let's say accounting, for example, for us to go off and figure it out and invest in learning about it and just all the things, the cost of sort of implementation has dropped down such that the bar for being willing to make an investment in sort of like a pilot or go to market has sort of dropped, allowing us to just be a little bit more kind of open to taking on more.
Yeah.
So the other thing for us, which is I'd say a recent, I don't want to say pivot, but just kind of a recent strategy for us, has been a really big focus on what are the things we can do to help new clinics get started in our space. And we've actually launched a kind of like a boot camp, which is a 10-week program. And what we're finding as we go through that sort of program to help them launch, there's just a number of things that every single one of them has to go and figure out. And some of those things are things that we could check off the box for them with an embed, so they have to go and find another vendor to trust and contract with. So that's been another kind of driver for us in terms of thinking about the types of partnerships to potentially put in play.
Yep, absolutely. And I think one pattern you see emerge is that the path for every platform is a little bit different, and it's going to be based off the needs of your customers. But I'd love to maybe take some specific examples, and if anyone wants to volunteer, like what was your specific sequencing of what you did after payments, and what was the high-level thinking behind, at the time, what you pulled up first?
I can go.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
You sounded like you had something good.
No.
Okay. I mean, ours was payroll, and primarily because it creates back office efficiency.
Yeah.
Our payments platform is amazing, but I don't sell payments because we can take a payment any better than another provider. We do it for efficiency, and the biggest efficiency gain for us and for our customers, which ultimately sells more deals, is the payroll side. And that was the immediate next step for us into the embedded product suite, was to move with the payroll product.
Yeah.
We explored payroll first and then chose against going to payroll. Nothing against embedded payroll, and I think that we will eventually do it. It's just that it wasn't moving the needle for our customers. And so we have to go to our customer and say, hey, what do you need? And we're like, hey, we're doing this shiny new payroll thing that you can pay me for. And they say, wait, I asked you for these other features, these other things. And so what we started with, and again, I have a lot to say about payroll. I think it's a great opportunity from an embed perspective. It was also, for us at least, an expensive embed. It would take us a long time and a lot of resources to do it. So we were weighing all of those considerations when thinking about payroll, and eventually decided to say, hey, let's punt this for a little while and focus on some other things. What we started with actually was marketing. And so we have embedded marketing, all of that user data, all the POS data, all the user data that lives inside Sense, when your last order was, who you are, what your zip code is, all that stuff lives there. So it was a natural add-on. And when you think about embed or just, why not just integrate? I think you embed when that experience is truly native to what you're trying to offer your customers. And so for us, marketing was very native to the thesis of Sense, and so we started with that.
Yeah. For us, the kind of intention behind the accounting side is where we started as a business is actually billing. And then we kind of evolved into other product verticals. We evolved into the scheduling and the full electronic medical record. And we had developed like a pretty sophisticated billing platform. But what we're finding is a lot of our sort of smaller independent clinics, they'll be using, let's say, QuickBooks. And there's just like quite a bit of overhead for them to try to figure out how to get it set up and connected and working. And so for us, it was sort of billing and accounting are, sort of two sides of the same coin to a certain extent. And so that felt like a natural place for us to start, but it's also something that every new business needs to launch. So every new business launching needs to figure out. So it kind of fit our rubric of like, will this help us accelerate go-to-market on new business creation? And so, that was kind of the intention there.
Yeah, absolutely. And going to one point you brought up earlier around kind of ROI, or this idea of what is the return relative to the investment, and there's a different spectrum there for different embedded products. I'm curious just to probe on that a little bit, like what role what were the ROI calculations, and maybe how do you think about some embedded products that have maybe high upside but high investment versus others that are quicker to roll out? feel free, anyone here, feel free to, take.
Okay.
You want to go first?
I'll go. You want to go first?
No, go please.
I think it's one of the hardest things you have to figure out when you're thinking about choosing how to embed and thinking about why am I doing this? What's my goal? For us, I think there's the obvious one, which is I can sell more stuff, I can make more money. And then the other one is entrenchment, right? Like maybe I'm going to spend a lot of time, and do you know how many millions of dollars we have to loan out in order to make it a serious line item for us, or whatever, how much revenue we're going to make? And the revenue number might not be that attractive, but people running all of their finances and having those things inside sense is just deeper entrenchment and more opportunity for cross and upsell later on. And so I think you need to think about that beyond just like what's my payback period on my investment. I think there's other factors to consider when thinking about ROI.
Yeah, I mean, for us, Fintech is not our primary business, right? Fintech is ancillary to our core product. So we've actually, I mean, the ROI for us, of course, is important. I'm not going to release a feature that I can't make money on, but it is an unlock feature. And to your point, from entrenching them in it, we have our dealers, before they come to Techion, use anywhere between 30 and 50 disparate software platforms on a monthly basis, whether it's marketing, website, CRM. And they come to us and they reduce that to under 10. And so for us, anything that brings them and keeps them on our platform ultimately just adds to their value to us.
And so switching gears a little bit, let's say that you've chosen what you want to do. Maybe we can talk a bit about what does that journey of actually building and executing on that look like? And Jamie, maybe I'll actually start with you.
Okay.
Just to use a specific example, like when you launched payroll, do you mind walking through from that decision of like, okay, we're going to do payroll?
Yeah.
What did the process look like from that to actually being live with your first customers and everything, choosing a vendor, building, like how did that process go?
We had very specific requirements on vendor selection. One of them was tax liability. So we narrowed it down to only vendors that help us take tax liability. Ultimately, we decided on check, but we had a version 1 product where it was very MVP. Like we just need a very basic payroll system to get dealers to come over to our platform. But we needed features that, one, we can offload. We don't have to take that liability. But 2, the onboarding piece has to be good, right? It has to live in our platform. It cannot be an integration, to your point. It is something that back office staff work in constantly. So we had to build it as an embedded product. Once we selected the vendor, the hardest part at our company is that we have so many products and a single core operating system or core platform. You have to get everyone involved to make sure that you're lining up your resources right. We cannot just roll out payroll because it will impact every single department. So that's honestly the biggest challenge for us to release anything, is making sure that we line up every department that will be impacted by changes that we make. Otherwise, no one's going to want to use the product.
How did you think about staffing that initiative before you started?
Well, it's a big fight every quarter when we plan, right? Because you have to get all your story points in and understand and basically go internally market why this needs to be done to convince other people. They have OEM manufacturer requirements, they have level 1 commitments that they've contractually signed for, and you have to navigate everything to make sure that from a staffing perspective, all of the things that you need are going to hit at the same time. That usually doesn't happen. You have some sort of delay in the process as things come up, But that's the biggest thing is the horse trading inside of the company to get things lined up to actually release on time so that you can meet your launch goals.
I was joking with Coin at dinner last night when we kicked off a process. I said, I think we want to do something with accounting. And I was chatting with him, and the beginning of my process was I called Coin, and he said you should talk to Justin at Layer. So that was perhaps not like the most structured way to go. But I think one of the things that I'd say was maybe a slight kind of pivot in our thinking in terms of how to explore a new product like this. Historically, if with a new investment we're making, it would have to be like a fairly significant amount of sort of upfront work in terms of validating the opportunity, thinking through the strategy, the costs, the trade-offs, like all of that stuff. But with the ability to kind of get something to a pilot or beta phase pretty quickly, that was part of the kind of part of our thinking was like, let's actually do a lot of that work that would have come ahead of time. Let's actually do that live in production with a small number of customers, but do it in such a way that you can kind of you can back out if you need to, because it's probably going to be cheaper to do that than it is to know everything up ahead of time. So that was kind of part of the way we thought about and are continuing to think about partnerships. And so I think for us, like, one of the criteria is, are the partners willing to kind of meet us with some level of uncertainty about what the outcome's going to be, and work really closely with us to ensure that we're able to kind of prove the value in this and make it a successful, kind of unit together to make sure it's a successful strategy before you go big. And then of course, a big part of it is a lot of these products, we've built trust over time, so we really wanted to be able to control the experience and have it really, deeply integrated into our existing product with our brand and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So those are some of the criteria that we looked at.
Yeah. I think your point on the importance of betas, I think they serve a whole host of benefits, validating demand, really battle testing the product. Yep. And for a lot of platforms, this might be the first product they've launched after their core offering, and so that is a new muscle to build. I know, Jamie, I think you have extensive thoughts on betas.
Yeah. Betas at Techion are very hard because we have a very interesting customer base that's very opinionated. They're basically looking for everything that's wrong with a product when you get to beta. So for us, beta really has to be almost GA ready. Yeah. And we only release it to a certain subset of customers that, to your point, are willing to take some level of pain, but give you the feedback about why it's problematic so that you can bring it to the entire market in a place where you're not going to impact their perception of your entire platform. Again, all the things we do are ancillary to our core, and churn is something that we monitor very, very closely as far as leaving. It's hard to leave our platform, but it does happen. So the betas have to be very strict as far as who they release to and what state they're in as far as the people that we work with at that dealership.
Is that, for us, when we think about releasing one of these embed products or whatever, we're not necessarily thinking about that as different from a core release that we do. This is new functionality that we offer our customers. It's embedded. Yeah. And when you think about an embed, sure, you can do the quick tack on and paint it your brand color, or you can think about really enmeshing that into your product, like you were saying, hey, how do we do that? And so when you're considering what is the actual investment that we're doing, but then when you go to release that, it's like, hey, here's this new functionality, and we try to lean that into the same protocols we have for the other parts of the business.
Yeah. I mean, one thought on the sort of beta phase. I think that maybe the sort of natural instinct is, okay, well, if it's relatively easy to get to beta, and so maybe you skip some of that validation and business model stuff on the front end. I think the cautionary tale is to make sure you don't get to beta and then rip through that and go full production launch without doing some of that heavy lift work in that beta phase, because I think that reversing out of something is also really not a good outcome, right? When you're sort of taking something away from customers because it's almost like too easy to get to production with a real customer. I think the instinct is like, okay, won't we go all the way? And I think that's the risk. I think with some of these really easy to embed products, you want to just make sure that you're really sure about it on the front. Yeah.
Especially when it's not necessarily the product and engineering team that are leading the charge on that relationship.
Because suddenly it's like out of nowhere.
Like, hey, we're going to do this thing. It's 3-day lift, and it's live, and then the person that kind of initiated it is no longer.
Well, and the level of trust you've built on the fintech side, you're the lifeline for them to operate their business.
Yeah, and if historically it would have taken us 3 to 6 months to get, let's say, an accounting product built and launched, you would have had multiple touch points along the way to make sure this is the right strategy and it's resonating. But if the engineering part of it is a week or a month or whatever, you just got to make sure you don't forget about all the other things that it typically takes to launch.
Yeah, there's not a workaround for payroll or taking a payment or anything like that, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that is a good point, which is that to make these products successful, even if they're lightweight engineering lifts, takes broader investment. Yeah. And whether it's doing a lightweight beta or during beta or prior to launch, you really do need to put that effort in at some point if you want the product to be successful. And I think that's something we should dive more into when it comes to launch, but to just stay on the active kind of building and executing more. For the folks, Gilly and Jamie, that have launched multiple embedded products besides payments, what surprised you the most? Like, what was the hardest part that you didn't expect was going to be hard?
For us, because how complicated our platform is, it's making sure everything works as beautifully as it does with the mature embedded product. when you add another one, because the expectation from an experience perspective and ease of use is from our dealer's perspective, is that it should match that at least at parity, right? And when you have multiple vendors, we design a lot of our UI and white label a lot of it, but it has to be as familiar and unique and as simple to operate as our platform is. And it's hard if you have multiple vendors that have different ways of implementing or integrating their product, is making sure that experience stays the same.
For sure. I think that, I'm going to second that. And when we're thinking about, okay, we're going to go ahead and release it to our customer, it has to be really, really native to the experience. But one thing that maybe was surprising is as you do the work to make that thing super native and feel just like your own platform, you'll realize how it connects to other pieces of your platform, making the embed that much more valuable. And so when we released, our AI, whatever, chat infrastructure, hey, that actually works really nicely with our marketing infrastructure, and these are two separate things that now are just naturally 1 + 1 is 3.
Right.
So moving to the next phase in this journey, so you've chosen a vendor, you've built, and actually, you know what, before we go on, talking a little bit more about vendors, since we did gloss over that a little bit. Vendor selection, there are multiple vendors in a lot of these spaces. How do you approach choosing the right one?
I mean, there's a lot of vendors that do very similar things, right? Like that's the big embedded challenge, right? Is, you go look for a payments provider, for example, and you can take your pick.
Yeah.
For me, I think a vendor that I tend to lean towards, assuming that the features are there and the price is right and all of that, is a vendor that listens to you. Like our vendors will come to us and ask us, we're thinking about designing this feature. Does it work for you, right? And that, of course, we're fortunate that we have the power of the payments volume, for example, to influence that roadmap, but they're very interested in learning about our industry and learning about how their platform may be gapped to accommodate us in a certain way, and they're coming to us proactively and asking us to provide them with that feedback instead of just saying, here's the API, good luck, you have to make it work.
Yeah, people matter, I think, a lot. And when you're choosing a vendor, it's not just, okay, they check the box on features A, B, and C, and you're going to see that all those competitor vendors, they're going to say, oh, we have that too now, oh, we have that too now, because they're all in that race. And so when you're choosing that partner, you need to know that they're going to be flexible with you, that, you just look at them. Are they going to be a good culture fit for your team? Because it is a partnership that, in theory, will continue to go for a long time.
Yeah, you're putting a lot of trust in the vendor you're working with, right?
It's just like another engine, so you're hiring your team,
Yeah, I think just reinforcing that, I think when you're, if you're bringing a product to market that you're building, it's your engineers, your product managers, you're going to have a lot of input in developing that product on the roadmap, how it looks, what the capabilities are that you need. So I think the vendors if they truly are kind of vendors supporting vertical SaaS companies, they should have a mechanism for allowing you to participate in that evolution of their product to make sure it meets the needs of your customers, and that shouldn't be a strange use case for them. That should be the way they work, right? It's like, and you're obviously not going to build everything you want, but at least that kind of partnership on strategy and roadmap and really deeply understanding your unique customer, I think, is really critical.
Yeah, you can probably stand something up if you just select a vendor, on payments, but you're going to run into a roadblock if you do not vet your industry against what they offer.
Yes. Right.
Just like our conversation last week, where I told you not to go into automotive accounting. It's very similar, right? You could launch payments, but then you're going to run into an issue. If not immediately, within a decent amount of time, you're going to hit something that's going to make you have to pivot.
And I think a common theme with embedded is the best embedded experiences. And the whole thesis of vertical SaaS is when it is tailored to the needs of the vertical. And so a muscle for embedded vendors to build is collaborating with platforms to understand the needs of their vertical. What are the differences and what are the ways to tailor the platform to make it as successful as possible so that the products you launch, the embedded fintech products you launch, can beat whatever external incumbent your customers are using currently. Yeah. So moving on to, you've built a product, chose a vendor, built a product, launch, and go to market. How do you have a successful launch for an embedded product? What goes into that, and what have you seen work particularly well?
I mean, we have an interesting strategy. So, our industry is so fragmented, and dealers have all these backdoor deals with their bank for processing, for example, or payroll, whatever it is. We give them, our best GTM strategy for this was give them choice on certain things, but enforce it on others. For example, our online payment surface, we require Techion Pay. Doesn't matter if they choose something for card present. They have to get a little bit of taste of that experience. And ultimately, even if they're not going to go all in with us on our embedded products, there are pieces of it from the fintech side that they're required to use. Ultimately, they get a little bit of a taste and realize that they've made a grave mistake, in my opinion, and they end up coming back more often than not.
Okay, so two things. One is maybe you can leverage that embed partner. A lot of times they know the value of what they've created, and so they can help give you some of that content from a go-to-market perspective and help even design what that playbook might look like. And going back to Vendor Matters, we did insurance, and our insurance provider actually flew out to come to our recent trade show and stood in the booth with a Sense t-shirt on and hawked insurance all day, and it was great. But another thing to say, hey, how can that embed partner actually help in your go-to-market? And going back to what I said originally, the go-to-market strategy, the marketing strategy, this is just more functionality that we're offering our customer base, and it's part of our general story. And so it's very part of the one.
Yeah, maybe just kind of adding to that, the thing that we've found is that, again, the instinct is that, hey, this is an embedded product, it's kind of like a separate thing over there, and so we should market it as such. But I actually think, for example, with our rainforest rollout, there's been core features that we're actually building that technically actually would be available to any of our customers, but we're actually packaging and bundling as part of that embedded suite, so that we're sort of treating it more like we would treat a core product strategy, even though it's a kind of embedded partner. We're able to sort of bundle and tier things in such a way that it optimizes the whole as opposed to just the individual. So one of the examples is we just implement a credit card pass-through fee feature in states which allow it, and we're actually only allowing that feature to be unlocked if you're on Hint Pay, even though technically we're essentially gating it artificially. And that's actually driven a bunch of adoption. Some of our adoption has come as a result of that. So I think the example you gave around integrating your AI models with the different products, so that's how I think you should sort of consider.
I think you have to look at where that embedded product can also help other pieces, right? You could just say I'm launching payments, but we're looking at how that impacts our AI tools on the cashiering side when they're speaking with customers, or whatever it is. It can benefit the whole platform, not just provide one functionality.
And to probe on that a little bit more, let's take maybe payroll for Techion or insurance for Sense. What were the tactical things you did to prepare for launch? Like trainings, creating collateral, and what was most helpful, and how much time did you spend there?
I mean, we're super rigid with the way we run betas. You have to have internal training, external training. It has to be PLG driven, because once you have a dealer that's implemented, we don't want to go back and have to re-implement a product as much as we can, right? So, from our perspective, functionality, L&D, and actual sales strategy are all hard requirements before we ever even put it out in the market to GA.
Changing gears a little bit, but still under go-to-market. One interesting dynamic that's true for many platforms is over time you have two buckets of customers. You have new customers coming into your platform, they're signing up, talking to your sales team, and then you have an existing growing base of customers that you might be trying to cross-sell products into. For embedded fintech products, how did you think about go-to-market with those two different personas of customers?
Yeah, so I think for us, it really depends on who's on the other phone on the demo. Right? If it's someone who's on pen and paper and then wants to adopt their first POS system, maybe we don't talk so much about some of the ancillary products. If it's someone that's coming over from a competitor, then hey, those add-on products are really, really valuable and a big differentiator. And so I think we have to think really thoughtfully about who we're speaking to and tailor it, because sometimes it can be a core thing, because it's the thing that differentiates us maybe from a competitor. But yeah, also you got to be careful, because a lot of the products that we choose to embed are complicated products, right? We chose not to build them and embed them because they're bigger, complicated things to build. And so there is definitely a learning curve when you're thinking about, hey, how are we setting up these training or whatever for this more complex part of your business? And so sometimes, depending on who you're speaking to, you don't want to necessarily go into it.
I think for us, our net new customers are majority sales-led growth, And that's because we have such a complicated platform. They're old school. They want to see every little piece of the product. They're not going to go sign up for a dealership management system on our website. And they can't for a reason, right? But on the existing customer side, they've already experienced what Techion is. And then we're inserting from the product-led growth side for existing customers ways to adopt those products easily, sign up themselves, do that kind of stuff. So we have two very separate strategies because it's such a heavy lift to sell our product. But once they're sold, we don't want to have to go through that full heavy lift again.
And are sales reps at Techion surfacing your other embedded products, whether that's capital or payroll, in those initial conversations?
Yeah, and they're packaged in a lot of cases. So, it gets sold on the majority of deals. Getting them to actually agree to implement certain things is a difficult part if they don't want to, but we do sell it on the majority of our deals.
For us, the thing, I'm not sure if this is the right strategy, but the strategy at least we're pursuing right now is the hypothesis is if it's a new business that's launching, from scratch, the ability to sell them, accounting, payments, payroll, banking, you name it, right? Like they're going to be in a process of buying. So if you sort of think about it like a vend rate, right? Like there's a 100% vend rate when you're starting a new business, as opposed to your established business, your customers, you may need to be a little more polished to be able to get them to move over. And so for us, it's like, what's the low-hanging fruit that allows us to get some momentum, build some, start with maybe a slightly less complex use cases, build up knowledge, build up capability, get wins, successes, and then as you move up market, you start to bring more and more of the more complicated use cases in, or the complicated sale, or the sort of the cross-sell or whatever. So that's the approach we're taking, and I think it's maybe a little bit less aggressive, but it feels kind of simpler to roll it out in a phased approach like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think from the first panel this morning, I think we're all systems of record.
Yes.
And so for us, right, we have all of the ERP data for our customers, so we can easily identify where the opportunities are, simply because even if it's not something we're in the funds flow on, for example, we can identify those opportunities almost immediately just based on the daily operational data that we get every single day.
And some of those opportunities beg us to actually build the thing.
Correct.
But an embed is just a faster, lower risk way of getting to that thing. And maybe one day we will build it if that proves out to be this really, really valuable line item for us.
Yeah, for us, right, like we know that there's 5x check volume compared to our card-based payments volume because it's recorded on every single transaction about how it's paid, which informs what we want to build, right? That's clearly a market share that we need to take advantage of.
Right.
Yeah. As a system of record, you have incredibly valuable data to inform your embedded roadmap. I want to pause there and shift to audience Q&A. Hopefully there's someone, hopefully there's someone with a microphone that can share, but if not, we will, feel free to just shout.
I'll try and as systems of record, right, you have to weigh, do I have enough customers to sell this into for it to make sense, right? And so like, what's that tipping point for you? Because, and what is a good adoption rate for some of these payments you want to do? You're never going to quite get there, but payroll, accounting, all this stuff is much lower, I would imagine, penetration. So how do you think about that trade-off, whether enhancing your system of records and build your own solution that's better for the customer versus adding on the embedded product?
Right, so it goes back to that ROI calculation. I also think it's for whom, right? Like my enterprise customers might be very interested in X, and I really want to serve those customers because they spend all their money with me, and I really want to go ahead and do it. So there's super value there. And if some of the downstream people take it, cool. And so like that's how we're thinking about the ROI and like what is the appropriate adoption rate. I don't think there's a specific number. It definitely depends on the product. But again, you're looking at how much money is it going to make me, and then what is it going to do for me strategically? Because maybe the answer is, hey, the more people that adopt this, boom, the upsell to this other product that's very expensive is a shoo-in. And so thinking about it holistically can help, I think, answer that question.
Yeah, I think when you have a customer base that is as broad as yours, and same with us, right? We have single point automotive dealerships. We also have public dealer groups that have 145, 175 rooftops. we tend to lean on what that 175 rooftop group is doing simply because all of it's going to impact downstream, right? They wanted a donation feature. We built it. Now it's adopting across the board.
Same.
But your mom and pop dealership in a random city in America is likely not going to have their own charity that they want a donation feature for.
Right, exactly.
So you'll never know unless you get with people that have higher demands than your single points.
Question back there.
Thank you. So when you bring a new partner on board, how do you look at support, onboarding? It's a new product. Do you look at your support team really supporting through your customers because they kind of, they expect like a extension of your product? Or you bring in the partner, their support team. How do you orchestrate that during the onboarding and later?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think you have to figure out how to support the customer, first line support. With our partners, with our embedded partners, we have a direct channel to their teams, and we expect really like good support from our embedded partner, and that's actually one of the criteria. But I think it's critical that you own the full experience, and so the way I'd think about it, or the way we are thinking about it, is sure, the build part of this project may be more simple than new typical product launch. But the customer education, the training, the sales training, like the marketing strategy, all of that is honestly like kind of like the same, right? Like you maybe you've got some help from the partner that will arm you with stuff, but you shouldn't skimp there, because ultimately, if anything, you need more support, because on the margin, that product is probably going to be slightly different to the way your thing works. With an embedded partner, it's never going to be exactly the same design. Well, it's hard, I think, to get exactly the same design patterns, exactly the same UX, exactly the same flows. Like, you can get close, but if anything, you need more support. And if anything, that's attention, because it feels so easy to get to kind of like to first base. And so the instinct is like, maybe everything else is going to be easy, but if anything, it's the opposite.
Yeah, I think with embedded, in my opinion, when you embed a product from another provider, you should be committing to support it to your customers, because a platform like us, we have so many different elements that if you're embedding a product, they expect the same level of support, they expect the same interactions, the same support channels. But on the back end, just like Zach was saying, you need a partner that is going to provide that second, third line support that is quick, because ultimately your customer is not blaming the partner. Like, my customer is not going to blame Check if there is a payroll issue. It is Techion's fault. Right? And you have to be able to support them immediately.
Right. We actually ran into this. We launched an embedded product a few years ago, and the partner was really good. It was actually, they're here. We launched embedded marketing. I was actually chatting with the CEO, but embedded not marketing, a website. And the hypothesis we did it. The learning curve there was like, we were like, oh cool, we'll just like do single sign-on, put it up there, and it's part of the space product, and then those guys can do the support, right? And it just like, it was a disaster, right? And it was not a disaster because of the partner. Like, they followed through and fulfilled their part of the deal. It was our fault that we didn't plan it properly. And we'll at some point probably come back to that partnership and do it properly, because it was actually something that our customers wanted, but we just weren't able to support it at the time. And it didn't go well.
The most important thing is to make sure you answer that question before you decide to go live. Because I think there is a combination. Yes, I agree. We should be the first line of defense. People are using my product, come to me. But if you got this weird insurance quote and you want questions about it, my customer success team is maybe not the right team to answer that question. But if we have a good relationship with our partner and we know exactly what to do when that question comes in, then at least the customer gets supported. But you've got to figure out what are those protocols and make sure you have the partner that's willing to go with you on those protocols before you decide to go.
Would you say, though, you can figure some of that out in a beta phase, though, right?
100%.
Yeah, so you don't have to know
and
that.
Right. And to your point, let's use the beta phase to figure out what that is, but don't ignore it before you go live. Have that conversation up front,
The other thing actually about beta phase is that it's, from my perspective, the right time to figure out the pricing and packaging as well. It's like you want to try to test that, iterate it a little bit, because,
Absolutely, a lot of preparation and a lot of learnings during beta. We're coming up on time, and before we wrap, I want to do quick rapid fire going down the line. If there's one piece of advice or thought related to building an embedded product you want to leave the audience with, what would that be? You can go, Julie. Yeah.
Sure. So I think really focusing on that ROI question is the most important thing, because these objects can be very shiny. It's really cool to be like, oh, I can offer loans in my system or whatever it is, and really think holistically, what does that mean for your brand? What does that mean for your customers? What does that mean for support? What does it mean for entrenchment? What does it mean for upsell? And think about it well beyond just, oh, the math is simple. I'll make X revenue if I have X% entrenchment.
Yeah, I think ROI is important, but I think one thing to really be focused in on is building an amazing experience. I think it's been said on a couple other panels, and it's 100% true for us. If you're building an experience that is really easy to adopt, really easy to use, disappears a little bit in the background, like they were saying, the monetization comes, right? But if you don't have a good experience, that's when the thing falls apart. And if you build too much at one time, you're going to get caught in that situation.
I think it's just sort of repeating it, but I think maybe bias a little bit towards action on the front end, but introduce caution on the back end to make sure you don't sort of maintain that velocity. You want to make sure you validate the hypothesis at some point, as opposed to just running hard the whole way through it.
Yep. A common thread across all of this.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much to our panelists, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.